Is it time?
Well, I mean, now it is.
It is now?
Yeah.
Which camera am I on? Okay. Oh, we're going to have to do some zooming in. I should have brought the other camera back.
That's fine.
We'll figure it out. Okay. Good evening. Welcome to an episode of The Show with Brent and Eddie. Or, what are we calling it? I don't know. The Four Pines. The show. The show. The big show. The sewing show. We haven't decided yet. But anyway, we thought we'd try something new and do it in the evening rather than the midday. Maybe we could capture a bigger audience this way. And when you're sitting down to eat, you let me into your home for the hour as we discuss the day's events and things going on. We don't want to talk about the day's events. Let's talk about sewing machines. Right?
Yeah.
Right? We good? All right. I don't really have any shop news today. We didn't get any fabric. We do have some fabric on the way in, though. I believe the Nightshade collection from Tula should be on its way in, and I think there's a collection from Three Wishes we got coming in. But if you wanted the Nightshade, because I know somebody had asked me about that about a month ago, we've got that coming in. That should be here sooner than later. I think it's about all we got for news right now. What I wanted to get into today, lots of exciting stuff, because I know some, it's almost, if you look in front of me here, we've got some sewing machines, and we're going to talk about all of these machines and even this one here. One of the things that I always find interesting is if you're looking at sewing machines, you always see White's rotary. You ever see the White's rotary machine, Eddie? Like any White machine has White's rotary on it, and that got me thinking, why are they so excited about their rotary? And then I was like, oh, let's talk about what that rotary means. And then that sent me down the rabbit hole. So anyway, when you see White's rotary, that's a reference to their rotary bobbin. White's was super excited about the fact that they had a rotary bobbin. They came out with that White's rotary family. I think that machine came out around the turn of the century, 1900, 1915, somewhere in there. And they're super excited about what their new technology, which was a rotary bobbin. And they made it sound like it was like all the newfangled specialness at that time, because anybody that had a sewing machine at that time, so I have the Minnesota here, had a shuttle bobbin. Do you know the difference between a shuttle bobbin and a rotary bobbin, Eddie?
Shuttle bobbin goes back and forth.
Yes. So, this Minnesota, has a shuttle bobbin in it. If I put it right there, can you get into there? Or should I put it over here more? Are we like making people crazy? You got it? Right there. So as I turn this, people can see them. Yeah. All right. So you see how that's your bobbin. This little thing here is your bobbin, your shuttle. And then as you continue to, you see how it's going to swing back and forth. And I think if I open this side, you can probably see both sides. Well, that side's probably rusted shut from the feel of it. But what happens this is the original design of sewing machines. So it had this little shuttle in here, and all it did was swing back and forth as you rotated your wheel. So you see how it comes out and goes back? It's not going in a circle. It's just going back and forth. So that was the original sewing machine design. And if you look closely, you can come back to here. You're going to notice on here there's a bunch of, oh wait, is that no, this one doesn't have, a lot of times you're going to see the patent dates on here. This one doesn't have it. This has got other stuff on there. Needle sizes. But a lot of times you're going to see patent dates on the covers, and because the big part of the sewing machine wars was who had the patents to what. So this the shuttle bobbin was popular for a while. So all your early machines are shuttle bobs. Like this Minnesota's a shuttle bobbin. Your super early Howe machines are all going to be shuttle bobbins. And then what is interesting is, and then White came out with their rotary, and suddenly kind of put rotary back on the map. And like I said, that happened about around the 1900s. What's interesting about that is the actual rotary mechanism, we're going to show you this here in a minute, was patented about 50 years before, in 1856, I think. But nobody really did anything with it. There was the guy that had the patent, he sold it to somebody for like $8. Or no, $35, which when adjusted for inflation is $891. So the guy that invented the rotary bobbin hook, like I said, he sold that to somebody for $35. And then it just kind of went away until the patent expired, and then White's was like, oh, this is a good idea, and they started putting their machines. So while that patent existed, most everything was this shuttle bobbin. And then we get into rotary hooks. Now, did you know there's two types of rotary hooks, Eddie? First off, what's the advantage of a rotary hook over a shuttle?
I don't know. I feel like it doesn't move as much.
Yes, that's the huge advantage over a shuttle, a rotary over a shuttle, is the vibration. Because if you look at the mass on this, again, I'll just open this up. You see how big this is? And then to take into account too that this whole unit, it's not centered. It's flailing back and forth. So as it goes, it's moving it's flailing. So what you would have at high speeds on these machines is there's a lot of vibration because of the nature of the shuttle. So by making it a rotary hook, making it spin, it concentrates the vibrations in one area. So you have less vibration. You can sew a little bit faster too. That's the other thing about the speed is the inertia and everything of that going back and forth is not quite as fast as something spinning. So that leads us to the rotary hook, which there's actually two different types of rotary hooks. Did you know this, Eddie?
I mean, I think so.
You do, but you didn't know you knew, because there's two different types of rotary hooks. There's an oscillating hook and an actual rotary hook. What's interesting is the oscillating hook kind of keeps the same idea as this shuttle, but it just made it usable on a regular bobbin. And then you also have your rotary hook. So I'm going to start by showing you the oscillating hook, which, believe it or not, is not on the Featherweight, which is the next oldest machine after that. It's actually on the Kenmore. One of the reasons that oscillating hooks were popular, or are popular, because they actually still make oscillating hooks, is because they're much simpler and much easier to design, much simpler and much cheaper to make. And an oscillating hook, this is a really good example, and I know a lot of you have probably had machines that have this, where you pop this out, and that's your bobbin case in there. But I want to pull that out to show you something, because the hook is actually in. This is your hook here. This is your hook, and it rides in this raceway. But watch what happens as I spin the wheel here. See how the hook just goes back and forth rather than rotate around it entirely? Do you see that? That's an oscillating hook. And like I said, these are much less sophisticated than an actual rotating hook. That's why you still see them. Like this Kenmore is probably 30 to 40 years newer than this Featherweight. But the Kenmore has an oscillating hook because it's a much simpler design, so it means that they can make the machines a little bit more affordable. The Featherweight actually has a rotating hook. Now watch this one. So I'm going to pull the bobbin out so you can kind of see what's going on here. And I'll pull that up. Can you see it there, Eddie? Put it back down.
Yeah, you put it back down.
Okay, there you go. Got a good view. So watch what's happening as I spin the wheel now. Do you see how the hooks actually? I'm probably spinning it backwards, aren't I? Am I spinning it backwards? I can't tell from here on the screen. But you see how as I spin the wheel, that hook is going all the way around instead of swinging back and forth. That's the difference between an oscillating hook and a rotary hook. Now, upsides to an oscillating hook is it's much less complicated than a rotary hook, than a spinning hook, because of and so you see that, so you still see them used today. What's the downside? Eddie doesn't know, does he? Speed. Speed is the big downside. Oscillating hooks are limited in their speed because you're swinging that hook back and forth. So you've got to overcome the inertia to get it to swing back to keep going. So at higher speeds, you could really create some interesting problems with that. Whereas with a rotary hook, because it's just spinning all the time, the faster you spin, the faster it sews, you're not trying to overcome any inertia to change direction. So a spinning hook actually is much better for speed, but it's going to be more complicated to implement than an oscillating hook. So that's one of the big differences. There's all sorts of weird arguments about oscillating hooks. Some people claim are better because it's better. I don't know. And I'm not saying one is better. You're also going to find that rotating hooks have less vibration because again, it's rotating. It's not going back and forth, causing more vibration. What's interesting too on a rotating hook is as the hook goes around, the hook goes around twice for every one stitch. Whereas on an oscillating hook, it's pretty consistent. It goes across for every stitch. Was that interesting at all to anybody? Now, drop-in bobbin versus the front bobbins, right? Because of all of these machines, you're looking at the bobbin underneath. What kind of hook is it when it's on top like this? I just have this machine so we can see into it real easy because this is a bobbin hook right here. What kind of hook is this, Eddie?
A good one.
This is a spinning hook as well because you can see that as we spin, any drop-in bobbin from the top is going to be a rotating hook, not an oscillating hook. Because the technology, I don't know of any, I'm trying to think now. I don't know of any drop-in bobbins that are going to be oscillating because the way that the way the mechanism is designed, yeah, I don't think you can do it. Or maybe you could, but I don't know if it'd be worth it. Can you think of one, Eddie?
I can't.
I can't think of one either. Now I'm gonna have to go look for that. So most any machine that's a drop-in is gonna be a rotating hook, and you're gonna see most machines now are drop-in bobbins. Now, what? You have a thought, Eddie? I can tell by your face.
Because when you do the back and forth one, it goes through and pulls up. Maybe
Yes.
It's harder to pull this way.
Yeah, it's got something to do with gravity. I know it's got to do with gravity because that's a big part of it. The trick when they're designing a bobbin case, the bobbin hook, is that you have to get the thread to pass behind the bobbin. Do you see? So if you can't get it to pass behind the bobbin, it can't create a lock stitch. So that's why all bobbin cases pop right out. Because they're just kind of floating in there because they have to pass the thread behind it. So that's what's going on with that. But you made me forget something there, Eddie, with your perplexed thought. Oh, so what would be the advantage now? Because most machines now are drop-in top. Some still push in the front, like this Kenmore. But why? What's the advantage of a push-in versus a drop-in?
I feel like it's easier to time and
What's a push-in?
It also seems very simple.
Which one?
The drop-in.
The drop-in. Yeah, but you're a mechanic. You're a sewing machine mechanic. Those are things that people that sew on them don't care about. From a use standpoint.
Oh, you have the whole you have to take out the whole tray to undo a.
Yes, but one of the upsides, and this is something to consider when buying a machine, one of the upsides of having your bobbin come in the front is that your throat here, your free arm, can be narrower. Because the free arm only has to accommodate the feed dogs and the width of your bobbin. Whereas a drop-in bobbin has to accommodate the width of the feed dogs and the bobbin mechanism. So your throat's gonna, your arm is gonna be a lot wider on a drop-in bobbin. Which is why on some industrial machine, a lot of industrial machines or like specialty industrial machines are gonna use bobbins that come in the front. Come in the side rather than the top because it gives it a smaller profile on the free arm. So if you have like a specialty, some sort of leather machine or a really specialty industrial machine, a lot of times you're sliding something on there. And so a front load bobbin is going to give you, typically speaking, in not all cases, is going to usually give you a narrower arm than a drop-in bobbin. So that's really the only advantage over it is that right there. And in most every other way, I really like a drop-in because you can see how much bobbin's left. It's much easier to change, except like on a long arm than your quilter. That's why long arms are in the front instead of on top. Stuff like that. Questions?
The Singer drop-in bobbins aren't good though.
Singers have a lot of problems. We've established that.
But I've noticed that the drop-in bobbins are especially bad.
Well, yeah, because there's one model of Singer that they tried to make where the drop-in bobbin could actually be wound well in the machine. Did you know that?
No. How did that work?
I've never seen it work. I just know it was supposed to do that. I've never seen it actually work right. But yeah, there's some complexity to a drop-in bobbin because one of the things you have to do is make sure that the bobbin, is properly secured but has enough space for the thread to get by. Yeah. There's some tolerances in there that are really interesting that you have to kind of fight with. But the more important thing, like I said, I want to talk about was just the hook technology between them. The original shuttle bobbin, this one here was was very similar to the oscillating hook in that all they did is they took that oscillation and minimized it to just the hook instead of having the entire bobbin oscillate. And then they went to the rotary action where the hook actually spins all the way around, which does a lot to eliminate eliminate a lot of vibrations. So a lot of you may have an oscillating hook machine at home. Like I said, this Kenmore's, it's an older machine, but I know a lot of people still sew on stuff like this. And that's why when you sew on a machine like this, it's a little bit noisier, it's got a little bit more vibration to it. And the other thing is, you'll also notice right away that this is one of the reasons why people talk about all metal machines as well. Because the vibrations from this machine are going to be dampened because of the metal case. It's not going to vibrate as much. Whereas if you get an oscillating bobbin on a plastic case, like if this here had an oscillating bobbin in it, and they do make one similar to this with an oscillating bobbin, what you're going to run into, because it's so lightweight, as you start to sew with it, it's going to vibrate and jump all over the place, and it probably won't sew very fast because you're going to limit the speed because of the vibration issue. So that is pretty much all I had to cover today, because I thought maybe you'd be all more interested in sewing machines than some weird story. Though I guess we could get back to weird stories if people like the weird stories while I sew. We struggle with our format on here, but we were hoping that the evening would bring more viewers. But I'm guessing from our live chat that the switch to the evenings was not a successful thing. But we'll see. We're going to do this for a couple more weeks and see how it plays out. But we just thought the evenings would be better. Any questions from our live audience? Because I really didn't have a lot planned for tonight except to talk about this.
No, they're just saying hello.
They're saying hello. Well, it's good to see everybody. Yay! So what did you learn today, Eddie?
There's a lot of cool different bobbins.
Yes, and that's probably also one of the things that made the featherweight so popular in its day too, is because it had a rotating bobbin in it. But anyway, that's pretty much all I had for today. It was rotating versus oscillating versus shuttles. Was it interesting? I thought it was. Hope somebody else thinks it is too. So, without much, so catch us again next week. We're gonna do the same time next week. We're gonna start trying to do Wednesdays at 6 to 6:30. And like I said, we got the Tula Pink nightshades coming in. That I'm hoping is going to be here later this week, but it might be next week. And if you have any questions, give us a call. Stop by for all your stuff. Check us out online, 4pinesquilting.com. Like, subscribe, and share, and all that stuff. And so on. And be excellent to each other.